Hello everyone, Jordan here. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to a new review. Today we're looking at the Corsair Sabre RGB Pro gaming mouse. Now before we get into the video, if you don't fancy RGB or you just want to save an extra 5 grams in weight, Corsair are actually selling the Sabre in a non-RGB version that sells for about $5 less. So as usual, I'll go through some key specs and then we'll get inside the box. So the Sabre RGB Pro is a champion mouse designed for esport pros, weighing an ultralight 74 grams with a drag reducing flexible paracord cable for responsive unhindered movements. The mouse also features Corsair quick strike buttons, so every click is immediately responsive. As we've seen with other Corsair peripherals recently, this also features the 8000Hz hyperpolling technology using the Axon processing. It's using a Pixar PMW3392 sensor which gives you up to 18,000 dpi, on-1 switches that have a lifespan of 50 million clicks, and there's also some other features that I'll cover as we go throughout the video. So let's waste no time, let's get straight into the box. The only extras we'll see here are the warranty, safety guide and instructions, and then onto the Sabre RGB Pro. So first things first, the Sabre is a mostly black but also gloss black design. Usually I'm not that big of a fan of gloss, but on this mouse it does make sense as it acts as a grip for the sides, which would ultimately add to the weight. That's not something that's going to help with the Champion Series title that Corsair is going for. The claim weight of 74 grams is accurate, with mine weighing 73, but as I mentioned in the introduction, if you're looking to save more weight, then grab the non-RGB version as that weighs just 69. Nice. On the left side we've got 2 programmable buttons, and by default these are set to forward and back, but can be changed in IQ. Further forward we have the DPI indicator, and as a side note that's another thing you won't find on the regular Sabre Pro or the non-RGB version. This indicator, as you can probably guess, tells you what preset you're on at a quick glance, and it can show 5 settings and starts at the closest light to the user, then adds an additional bar to show setting 2, the middle for 3, middle and end for 4, and then the end on its own for 5. It's a bit tricky to explain, but you get the idea. If you want to, you can also change the colour of that display, which I'll show you later in the video. On the underside there's not too much to look at, just predominantly the certifications and details, then the sensor and the PTFE pads, which are replaceable. While we're on the underside, to the front we'll see where the USB cable is fixed to the mouse. This is an extremely soft cable that literally feels like a shoelace. It's hard to believe there's even a cable inside of it, it's so light and supple. And this terminates to a regular USB port on the end. On the right of the Sabre we've got a plain side, there's no real noticeable textures or grips to mention, but as I did say earlier, this gloss acts as a grip to give friction to contrast the otherwise matte body. Along the top we'll find the DPI switch for the presets, which can be customised as you'd expect. The scroll wheel, which is notched, giving you a light bump when rotated. It also has a click for the middle mouse button. Now I know a lot of people do want to know about how the mouse actually sounds when you click all the buttons, so if you're interested in that, this is the part for you. So one of the main points for me when I started using this mouse was just the size of it. If you've used the Harpoon or you're considering going from that or the Qatar for even that matter to this, it is a considerably bigger mouse, but I think certainly one that is a great benefit. Now being a long-handed boy, I often find that some mice just aren't long enough, and even though this isn't an overly large mouse, it certainly fits my hands just absolutely perfectly. Now being a large-handed person you might think, oh that's going to be too big for me, but I've had medium-hand people use it and they've had no problems there either. So you don't have to worry too much if you're a smaller-handed person. I think this is going to work for you just fine. So let's quickly take a look at IQ4 for anyone that wants to know how the Sabre is controlled, and you can do custom mappings and stuff. So let's go on to the Sabre itself. Key assignments is our first control at the top. This will show you all the buttons that are available on the mouse, and here is where you can change what the functions do. So let's say we want to make something simple just for a demonstration. We want to do a copy and paste on the left side. So we can either use the photo here and click on the button we want to do it to, or you can either go like this. So we'll put our keystroke in there, and then you can change the button that you want to do it with. So you can either click over here, so say we want it on that button there, or you can actually click it on the mouse and that will change. Let's do another one just for a demonstration. So we want to do Control V and we want to put that on the back. Maybe not the kind of orientation that you'd use, but as I said, it's just a quick demonstration. You can launch media, do apps and all sorts of different things for that, do macros, profile switching. Really, you know, you can go in depth and change things around. You can even set this to a sniper button as well if you want to make one of those on there as well. So lots of different things you can do. If you go to the advanced section, you can keep the original key output if you want that there as well. Bottom left, we've got the assignments library. So if you're someone that makes a lot of macros or key assignments, you can put those into the kind of assignments bin and then just go through and easily change them out. So lighting effects, this is what's going to be displaying on the mouse when IQ is on. So if you're plugged into a PC that's running IQ, maybe you know you're at home and you want to change all the lighting, this is where you're going to do it on this bit. So for example, I've got rainbow. Now if you keep an eye out in the video, you will see the current presets that are on the mouse, so you can see those actually in the video. But for sake of argument, let's just change it to a color pulse. You can do random colors or do an alternating. Personally for me, a white and red is always nice. White displays really well on this mouse as well. By the way, that's something I always touch on. RGB is a tricky color to make white with, but this one seems to do a pretty good job. You can either change these colors on scroll or onto the logo as well, or you can just pick all. So for example, you could have one color on the scroll wheel and another color on the logo, or just all on one, whichever you fancy. You can layer these up as well. So if you want to add another one, this is where you're going to do it. So let's say we want the color pulse on the scroll wheel and we want to have a watercolor on the logo. There you go, that's how you do that there. Hardware lighting is the same, but for when the mouse is not running IQ. So if you plug into a friend's house or you're using this on a console, this is where you're going to be doing that. So you don't have quite as much options here, but this is obviously for when IQ is not running. So you're going to be a little bit more limited on what you can do. So here you can just change all these. Those are different options. Pick what kind of color you fancy, random color. You can alternate again, just like that. So DPI, these are the presets that are in the mouse, and obviously you can change the rates of each of them. So personally for me, I've been using stage 3 quite a lot, but you can obviously change those quite easily if you want to. You can change the DPI color as well. This is actually what displays on the DPI indicator. So if you want to add a color on there, you can do that. And then for your sniper button, that will do a different mode or a different color. So you get a quick glance and you can see what mode it's set to. Surface calibration, this is making a spiral to whatever kind of mouse pad you're on. So you just press and hold and drag that round and round and round and round, and then that will calibrate to your own personal surface. So maybe if you use a glass mouse pad or a cotton or a hard surface, it's going to get you the best kind of control possible once you've calibrated it. Last but not least, we've got the settings where you can check for any update for the firmware, the polling rate where you can set that to the massive 8000 Hertz. By default, they set it to 1000 just to ensure maximum compatibility with older devices or older PCs. So if you do want to actually use that to the full potential, make sure you enable it in IQ. That will quickly reload and then we can get back into it. If you want to disable the on-the-fly adjustments, you can do that as well. So maybe you're doing a more competitive game and you want to make sure you don't accidentally press that button during the game. You can just click that on there. Brightness of the LEDs, if you want to enable the optimization of the button response, you can do that. Other settings, we've got angle snapping, enhanced pointer precision, and then the pointer speed. So let's give you some thoughts about what I think of the Sabre RGB Pro. Primarily my grip for this mouse has been a palm style. That's generally what I use, and I found it to be super comfortable. As I mentioned, one of the best fitting mice that I've found for my kind of grip and just my size of hand. If you've got a small hand, I think that's probably going to be the limitation to this mouse. For those bigger hands, then yeah, this is certainly one to consider. As you may have seen in the video, I did try different grip styles and they all worked perfectly fine. The claw grip works quite well with this mouse, but personally for me, palm grip is the way I go. Functions wise, this has got everything that I really look for. It is a mouse built primarily for mobile gaming, so it may not have quite the amount of buttons that people that do MMOs would want, but for MOBA and certainly FPS games, there's more than enough buttons to get you by. The construction is great. I really do like the DPI indicator on there just to see at a quick glance what setting you're on. Of course, you can change the color as well, which is a nice little bonus. If you're not about that RGB life, then the standard version is obviously going to be the one for you. The real deciding factor, I think, is going to be the weight if you're not really too fussed about the RGB, or the DPI indicator. So those of you that want a really light mouse will obviously go for the non-RGB version. But that being said, if you're not worried about the weight, for the extra $5, the RGB and the DPI indicator are quite nice to have. Now touching on the 8000 Hz, obviously that's a crazy polling rate that this mouse uses. We've seen this a few times previously in Corsair products, but the mice I think is where it's especially important. Keyboards are a little bit different because there's a gap between the switches to actually activate, where the mice use the 0 gap switches, so it's kind of more important I think in the mice than the keyboards. I would say unless you're actually looking at this for a competitive standpoint, the 8000 Hz isn't going to be something that everyone's going to really benefit from. Personally, for me, I can't really tell the benefit of doubling or even quadrupling the polling rate going from 1000 Hz upwards. It's really going to be down to those competitive players that really need every millisecond to count, which personally for a casual gamer like me isn't something that I really need. But that being said, the nearest competitor to this mouse would be the Razer 8000 Hz Viper, and this actually comes in $20 cheaper than that model. And at $59.99 MSRP, I don't think that's too bad. And I wouldn't be surprised if you'd see mice that don't have that 8000 Hz polling rate, for example, at a more costly price than this. So if you take all of my gassing into account, it comes up as a pretty good mouse. I really enjoyed my time using this mouse before bringing you my review, so I hope it was some help. If there's anything that I did miss that you're wondering about, do leave a comment and I'll get back to you. I will leave links for this and the non-RGB version in the description if you fancy picking one up. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and ding the bell so you don't miss an upload. Big thank you to Corsair for sending this out for me to review. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.